evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about the Rural Revive and Reside Grant Program. We're super excited to be here and be talking about this opportunity with everyone. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Carly Stoffer, and I'm a grants administrator with Utah Main Street and the Utah State Historic Preservation Office. And then I have my colleague here, Chelsea, who's going to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chelsea Gauthier. I am the Utah Main Street Program Manager and Statewide Coordinator. So I work with now 22 of our Utah communities as we are, really strengthening our network of Main Street revitalization across the state. So thank you for being here. And yeah, we're thrilled to take a deep dive of the Rural Revive and Reside grant with you all today.
We're really looking forward to talking about it, and we think it's a great opportunity for historic buildings throughout Utah to bring some more life to them and get the interiors really contributing to their communities again. So before I jump into anything too far, I just want to give you an idea of what we're going to cover during this 30-minute session. So I'll start by giving a general overview of the program. I'm going to talk about eligibility, funding availability, the timeline, and then we'll talk about how to apply for the program. So that should take about 15 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. And we'll go over any of those with you all, and that'll be a wrap. So thanks for joining us. I'll jump right into the most important news, which is that applications will be opening 1 week from today on Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. Applications will be closing on August 15th, 2025. So it's about a month to get that application submitted. There is an optional early staff review deadline, and that's August 1st. So if you start on your application right after this webinar ends and you feel like you're in a good place by August 1st, the early staff review form, you can submit your application through there. And what that means is that me and some of the people on our team will take a look, and we will only be checking for completeness. So this review isn't for merit or quality of the application. It's purely, if you're missing a document or if you didn't use the required budget template, we'd review, make notes of that, and then send feedback around August 8th so that the applicant would have time to make any necessary updates and then fully submit the application to the application form by August 15th. So that's completely optional. So let's get into what is the Rural Revive and Reside program. The overarching vision of the grant program is to fund improvements to the interior spaces of historic buildings. So these historic buildings need to be located in a Tier 2 Utah Main Street community, a rural Tier 2 Utah Main Street community within the program district. But the goal would be to improve the interior ground floor into some sort of commercial space. So something that's going to be bringing residents, visitors, people into the Main Street district, and the upper floor into housing or residential space. A little background on the program. So this funding actually comes from the National Park Service. We were awarded the funding and then created this program to help out the Utah Main Street communities. So because of that, a portion of the program is subject to National Park Service oversight. There was $650,000 available to be granted out. This is round 2 of the program, so now there is $450,000 remaining to be awarded out approximately. It is limited to rural Tier 2 Utah Main Street communities because that's the Park Service's focus. And then there is a matching funds requirement, so you can't use any federal funds unless it's the CDBG funds. So what kind of projects are eligible for the program? Like I said, it's focusing on interior work, so ground floor spaces to commercial, upper floor to residential. Some examples on the ground floor might be something like a restaurant or a bakery or a theater. Commercial is really broad, so just thinking about what would serve your community well or what there's interest for could be a good way to activate the ground floor commercial space. And then upper floor, like I said, is residential, which could mean something like apartments, multifamily. It could mean, shorter term rental like an Airbnb. There's a lot of room for what that could be as well. Some things to keep in mind, like I've said, this is an interior focused grant. So ineligible items are going to be anything on the exterior. So this is not a facade grant, so no exterior repairs, no facade updates. If you're doing new building construction, this isn't the grant for that either. If the work was completed before the grant project period, that's not going to be eligible. And if it's furniture, fixtures, or equipment, that isn't eligible either. This grant is focusing on, actual construction elements in the interior. So, how much funding could you get to revitalize the interior space of your historic building? The maximum amount is $50,000, and the minimum amount is $25,000. So you can't apply for any less than $25,000, and you can't apply for any more than $50,000. And with that, it does require a 25% match. So what that means is that if you're applying for the maximum award of $50,000, then you need to be providing $12,500 in a cash match or an in-kind match to get that full amount. So the total project cost would have to be at least $62,500 in order to apply for the maximum of $50,000. Also, I want to highlight this is a reimbursement grant. So while you would apply for the $50,000 and be awarded for it, the owner or whoever is doing the work would be paying upfront for all of those costs. And then when the project is completed, we would reimburse all those eligible expenses. All right, so who can apply for the grant? There's kind of two main categories. One is property owners of historic buildings. And what property owner means can be, it's a little broad. It can be an individual, it could be a corporation or a nonprofit. But if it's not an individual, then we do need a resolution from the board of directors authorizing the signer of the application on behalf of the corporation or nonprofit. The other option is you could be a tenant of a historic building, but the tenant would need to have the property owner's signature of consent to the scope of work. So basically, we just need to know if you're applying for the funding to undergo interior remodels, that the owner of the building is aware of what's happening and approves of it. Okay, so I think I've mentioned in order to be eligible, the historic building needs to be in a rural Tier 2 Utah Main Street community. So this is the list of the current rural Tier 2 Utah Main Street communities. And when I say rural, there's a very specific definition that is based off a USDA map. So it might not be what you consider rural, but we're going off that eligibility map. So the communities you can see listed there on the screen. So how do you find out if your historic building is in the Utah Main Street Program District? One way is you can look at the Historic Utah Buildings database. In the database, it has a layer function. So you would type in your building address and then select Utah Main Street Program District and then search, and it will highlight everywhere that is within the district. You will be able to see if your building is in that district. The hub does also provide some basic information about whether your building is on the National Register or eligible to the National Register's Historic District. However, the hub can be wrong. So it is all right to, if you're not sure whether your building is contributing to your historic district or individually listed on the National Register, you can check on the hub as a starting point, but then I would strongly encourage you to reach out to our National Register and Survey Coordinator, Corey Jensen, whose information is on the screen. Or you can reach out to me and I will connect with Corey and we can get that information to you about the National Register designation. Okay, so what do you need in order to apply? I mean, the main thing is take a look at our grant program application packet. It's something like 35 pages long, so everything that I'm saying in this brief 15 minutes, it's going to have way more detail. It has a sample application you can look at. It has a sample of the score sheet that our exterior panel will be using to judge the applications. It walks through eligibility and things that we need, like the map of the Main Street district, provides detail on the type of photos. So that's the best jumping off point. The second thing you should do is if you don't have a unique entity identifier number or a UEI already, and you think you're interested in applying, I would jump right into getting that UEI. It's not a difficult process, but it is a process that can take 1 to 2 weeks for the federal government to get back to you with the information. So I strongly encourage, we have how-to guides on getting a UEI number and getting a sam.gov account. So starting with those, getting that number rolling while you are preparing your application materials is encouraged. Also, on here, I've mentioned consulting with Utah Main Street and or the State Historic Preservation Office. If you are interested in applying, this is also a good thing to do, is to consult with myself and our preservation architect, Jansen Bennett. This is subject to availability, but if scheduling allows, having a video call with us or a site visit can be useful to talk through your project idea and how that aligns with the application. So we do strongly encourage you to reach out for consultation, and if there's availability, that's something we love to do. Okay, and there is a required budget template. I did put the link to the website in the chat. Our website has all of this information on there. So first place you should go is the website, and that's going to have everything you need. Yeah, and I will also mention that you do need a letter of support from your local Main Street program director in order to apply. So we do have a directory of all the local Main Street program directors for the communities. But if you don't know who your local Main Street program director is, reach out to us. We'll get you in contact with them about getting a letter. Okay, I already talked about this in a little bit of detail, but like I said, looking into the EIN and the UEI right away so that ball can be rolling. It is a requirement for the application that you submit a UEI number. And we have the how-to guide, so definitely look into that. This is an example of our required budget template. Essentially, we need you to itemize the project tasks and materials, and then make it clear whether you'll be using grant funds for that item or match for that item. And then the sheet will populate those numbers out for us. This template is required. You cannot provide your budget in any other form. If you provide your budget in a different form, the application will be ineligible. And the required budget template is on the web page. You can download it there. Okay, how long will the projects have? This will vary a little bit depending on when we're able to get contracts signed. So that will be a conversation that is had with each grantee, but we're anticipating around 1 to 2 years for construction and to complete all deliverables. All right, on the general timeline, like I said, the application window is open from July 16th to August 15th, with that early completeness deadline of August 1st for those that are interested. Those will start being reviewed by our panel right after the window closes. And we'd like to say it'll take about a month to get back, but there is a preliminary eligibility approval step with the National Park Service, so that might push it a little bit further. So we would expect answers sometime in summer, fall to the applicants. And then once applicants have been notified of award, we will have site visits. So come out, see the building, talk through the scope of work, get the contracts going. And then once the contracts are signed, construction can start. So if you're interested in applying, what strings are attached? The main strings, there are some reporting requirements. So we will need monthly status updates from all of the awardees. These are just brief, let us know what project tasks have been accomplished during the month. It doesn't need to be super detailed. And then there are the biannual reports, which do need to be detailed. That's going to be all project tasks and deliverables achieved during the 6 months, as well as financial documentation. The other important item is that all of the project work must meet the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. And that's why I encourage you all to reach out about a consultation or a site visit with our preservation architect because he can let you know if the work you're considering is in line with the Secretary of the Interior standards or not and provide alternatives and considerations. And the last string is the preservation agreement. So the preservation agreement lasts for 5 years and essentially says that you won't do anything to damage the National Register character defining features of the building for a period of 5 years. All right. So those are the strings. It's basically all of the information you need to know about applying. So I want to just really quickly show everyone the website. Like I said, the link is in the chat. This is the page here. As you can see, we have it before you apply, but that application packet I was talking about is the first button. So that's the starting point, then the budget template, and then over here you have those UEI and SAM.gov instructions. And feel free to peruse further, but I just wanted to draw your attention to those three. That is all the information I had to share for this evening. So if there are any questions, I'm going to open the time up for that now.